The British Empire was made as great as it was thanks to the sale. It was composed of the British Isles and the territories conquered by Great Britain. It has been said the sun never sets on the British Empire. The British Empire was constantly setting up new colonies around the world, one of the biggest colonies being the 13 colonies in North America. To control the empire, Great Britain created the largest navy in the world at the time. The Royal Navy ruled the seas until World War I, after it destroyed the Spanish and French fleets at the Battle of Trafalgar. The British Empire grew as its military could control the sea. British enterprise provided commerce and settlers that held these far-flung territories together. Religion gave the British an excuse to turn economic rivalries into military competition with nations such as France, Spain, and Portugal, those nations being majority Catholic, whereas Great Britain was majority Protestant. The British ultimately created an empire that spanned close to 3 centuries in the globe, from an island nation many times smaller than the territories it controlled by the domination of the seas. If not for the sale, the British Empire would not have been able to travel the world and gain such power.
The last main empire that profited from the sale was the Spanish Empire. In the 1800s, the Spanish Empire was one of the strongest empires around in Europe. It had a well-designed military with some of the greatest warships that were armed with some of the greatest guns in Europe. They made more weapons than anyone else had seen. For instance, the Spanish had the 50 caliber gun. It was one of the most powerful guns back in the early 1800s, and it still is in today's handguns. However, it fell into a string of wars for the Spanish crown at the beginning of the 18th century. In the 1840s, the empire was slowly losing its power and influence with its neighboring countries. More and more of them began to grow in power, and Spain began to decline. Spain was one of the greatest destinations for travelers and merchants. It had and still does have great weather and architecture. Many rich nobles like to sail there to relax for a bit in the Spanish sun, while many others like to purchase their goods. The Spanish Empire became a powerful and great empire that was made possible by the sales of their ships as well as the sales on each merchant's ships. As each of these empires progressed, so did their means to travel. Each empire had their own sail design, and that helped each of their progressions. The sail led to many great things in Europe back in those times, even if it wasn't insignificant now.
The sail also helped the French Empire thrive. France was the greatest power in Europe during the 18th century, known for the longest reign in European history by Louis XIV. He was also in power from 1643 to 1715. Being known as one of the greatest countries in Europe wasn't all a good thing. The French population grew rapidly, forcing farmers to split up their land. The split up of the land made it a struggle for farmers everywhere. France went into great debt in the 18th century, leading to multiple regulations and stores. Still, the French had much land, controlling even Mississippi. The area for the French in Mississippi did not start until 1682. René Robert Cavelier de la Salle was the one to claim the area by sailing down the river, which he named that area Louisiana. The sail helped bring the French Empire this strength and power, even if it did not last.
Although the Dutch Empire didn't control nearly as much land as the British, the sail still allowed them to influence the world. The Dutch East India Trading Company, also known as the VOC, had a leading role in growing the Dutch Empire financially. It was created by John van Riebeeck in 1602. It worked for a multitude of European governments and was given the ability to hold a trade monopoly as long as they paid the governments for their rights. They dominated the trade industry. They eventually saw their decline as other European countries turned more imperialistic and became bankrupt. Because of the VOC, the Dutch were able to gain control of many distant territories throughout a few centuries. It gained a foothold in Batavia in 1610 and had conquered most of Ceylon by 1640. They were the only European country that Japan traded with. In return for trading goods, the Japanese were introduced to new approaches in sciences and mathematics. This helped the Dutch gain influences around the Eastern world. As the Dutch Empire rose, they began to sail to build colonies, especially in the lands of Africa. Such exploring and colonizing these lands also spread their religions around, like Protestantism and Catholicism. Although the Dutch Empire wasn't the biggest empire during this time, it made a big impact across the globe thanks to its travels.